B1 family, welcome to Blacklogic.
Summer camp is a time for kids to make lifelong memories, right? And that is exactly what New York's New Country Pride Camp says that it does, all while aiming to also be inclusive.
Yeah, it's amazing. The camp website describes it as a welcoming community of LGBTQ plus young people and staff to create an experience where everyone is able to thrive. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo got a firsthand look at the camp.
Fair use.
Stephen, did it make you want to be a kid again?
Yeah, wow, it brought back so many memories, guys. This camp's only in its third year right now, but parents and organizers agree it's much needed, a place where these kids can not just be tolerated, but celebrated. For many kids, camp helps add some sparkle to their summers.
They're a little chunkier.
At New Country Pride Camp,
If you didn't believe that this was true, or you thought it was a joke, it is true. They're coming, and they have came, and they have gotten your kids.
that sparkle is a lot more literal. The 14th Street Y and New Country Day Camp are in the middle of Pride Camp. Now, in its third year, the program is specifically aimed at serving LGBTQ plus kids and children of people in those communities. These Pride campers from across the New York City area have come for a taste of typical summer fun.
Everybody here is part of the LGBTQ community, so you have a lot of people that are just like you.
From my experience,
Of course, out of all the youth you see in this video, the one black child is now the spokesperson, where the majority of the camp is non-black.
It's an evil world we live in.
when a bunch of people in the same community gather together, it's so much easier to talk to them and make friends.
Camp staples like swimming, rock climbing, and arts and crafts. But the campers also get some more pride-centric activities, all with a focus on inclusivity and self-expression.
I did a lot. I'm a battle-worn, zombified vampire.
And LGBTQ plus counselors.
Children at this age is very vital and pivotal, and their brains are like sponges. They still don't have the mental and psychological and informative decision making as an adult would have, based upon the information they're giving throughout the years, whoever they're grown up with, whoever their parents are. They need information, knowledge, and wisdom to make these very vital decisions in which they want to be and what they're going to be based upon what they're feeling at the time.
Are also on hand. They help show the kids the joy and connection of being in the queer community.
I have these trans kids coming to me and saying, are kids going to use my pronouns in middle school? And it's tough to see them recognize that school is not going to be the same as Pride Camp.
If this camp existed when I was younger, I would be a very different person. I think my internalized homophobia would be much less.
One of the realities still today about being an LGBTQ plus kid is a sense of isolation. When kids are here at Pride Camp, they are accepted and they are part of the group. And the hope is they'll be able to take that sense of belonging outside of these campgrounds.
Do not let the non-black society tell you that the face of the LGBTQ community is black. It is not. The vast majority of LGBTQ are non-black people, substantially, within the United States of America. And now they're creating these communities to be more inclusive to youth, to transform, to manipulate, trick, and fool very impressionable, very easy, coercive children to be something that they probably wouldn't decide to be if this particular subject was not promoted and shoved down the throats and embedded inside the psychology and psyche of our youth by seeing it over and over again on the Disney Channel, in cartoons, in commercials, in parades that they show on TV. As we see here, queer joy comes alive at this summer Camp Haven. For so many kids in the South, there is no safe place for a child. And this is basically the liberals, this is basically the Democrats speaking out against the Republican Party, saying you guys have these very discriminatory laws, discriminatory sanctions, discriminatory acts that will affect children. So we're going to make a safe haven. A music camp in Tennessee welcomes all the youth who identify as girls or non-binary to rock out. So again, when we talk about youth family, we're talking about children under the age of 18 who do not have the ability to be self-sustained by themselves, to take care of themselves, to clothe themselves. And we understand that parents are an influential part of the way children decipher, think, understand, and comprehend, not only in their everyday decision-making, but their future decision-making that has very vital ramification that comes into fruition in their later teens as well as their earlier 20s. But they have made an environment to be inclusive, and they're starting at a very, very young age. The youngest I've seen so far is the age of 6. But I want to show you some of these camps so you can be aware of that your children may be attending and you're not knowing the actual premise of the premises and the environment in which your kid may be attending. We'll get deeper into some of these camps just a little later here. But to start off, California and Maryland, Camp Brave Trails, ages 12 to 18. Camp Renutket, New Hampshire, ages 8 to 18. Camp Highlight, Pennsylvania, ages 8 to 15. Camp Outright, ages 13 to 17 in Vermont. Camp 10 Trees in Washington State, ages 8 to 17. Camp Firefly, Alberta, Canada, ages 14 to 24. Camp Lightbulb, Massachusetts, ages 14 to 18. Camp Outdoors, Arizona, ages 11 to 24. Camp Lilac, Ohio, ages 12 to 17. Camp 10 Oaks Project, Ontario, Canada, ages 8 to 17. But let's dive a little bit deeper into these camps when we're referring to gender sexuality and how the many amalgamations and transformations of camps that they've made to be more inclusive to children who has scientifically been proven not to make sound decisions of the future ramifications that it may have on their lives later on, especially when we're talking about gender reassignment. Now, before I get into this, I must point out that liberals and people who support these environments and these actions and these narratives, they're going to state something like, LGBTQ summer camps can offer a supportive and inclusive environment for young individuals who identify as LGBTQ, providing them with a space to express themselves freely, form friendships, and develop a sense of belonging. These camps can be especially valuable for LGBTQ youth who may face challenges and discrimination in other settings. So let's go down some of these summer camps, and then we're going to kind of dive into the statistics and the information and science behind it all. So Brave Trails, LGBTQ plus, youth ages 12 to 18. We talked about Camp Firefly, but this one is for queer and trans youth ages 14 to 24. We talked about Camp Highlight, teen ages 16 to 18, who also have LGBTQ parents because some of these camps are allowing LGBTQ parents to attend the summer camp with their children. Now, we understand that there is a direct link to pedophilia when it comes to the LGBT community in reference to children. Camp Indigo, trans and gender diverse youth ages 4 to 16. This is in Colorado and Oakland, California. LGBT Family Plus, Allies in Quincy, California. That is Camp It Up. Camp Lightbulb, LGBTQ, youth ages 14 to 18. This is in New York and Los Angeles. Camp Lilac for transgender and gender diverse youth. Camp Outdoors, trans and non-binary youth retreat for ages 11 to 14. That is in Arizona. Camp Chords, ages 12 to 14 and 15 to 17 for queer youth and youth of queer youth parents. Camp 10 Trees, we talked about that one. Camp True Colors, this is for LGBTQ families, okay? Transgender and non-binary and otherwise gender expansive. Let's come down here. This looks like a French camp for transgender and gender non-binary from ages 10 to 12. That's in LA as well. Harbor Kids, non-binary youth. We have Cashapp LGBT Family Camp, queer-headed, and this is for Jewish families for them to come along, and this is in California as well. And you see, I have a lot more highlighted, but family, I know that you get the picture. We got from the lowest ages of 6 going up to the ages around 24 years of age. But if you notice, a lot of these are starting at 7 and 8 and 6. For girls, transgender, and gender expansive, that is Rock Camp SLC. Here's another one, Unicorn Day Camp for transgender and gender non-binary kids ages 6 to 10. And that's in Pasadena, California. And we also have, unfortunately, international camps that shows inclusive to the LGBT plus that, in my opinion, can be considered as non-beneficial to foundational Black American children. Now, the one thing that we must harp on is the science behind it all. Now, this is from a government website. They did a study, of course. But before we get into the study, let me just point out some information I think is very important for you guys to know and understand. Because we understand that the brain regions that are responsible for decision-making and understanding the consequences of one's actions continues to develop throughout childhood and adolescence, do it not. The prefrontal cortex, which is located in the front of the brain, right behind the big noggin, the forehead. Now, that is responsible for these functions of decision-making and understanding one's actions. We understand that cortex is not fully developed until the early 20s. But once again, if we reference back to these camps, they're accepting children at the age of 6 and beyond. Now, this means that children and adolescents are less able to understand the long-term consequences of their choices than adults. They are also more likely to be impulsive and to make decisions based on emotions rather than logic. However, some may say in certain studies that children's ability to make informed decisions does improve with age. That's true based upon the information and experience and knowledge that their parents informing them of. Because some may say that, by the age of like 9 or 10, most children are able to understand what we may call the basics consequences of their actions. And by the ages of usually around 14 or 15, some children are as capable as adults of making informed decisions about their lives, but not in totality, okay? Because if you remember what I stated earlier, that frontal cortex is not fully developed until your early 20s. So there are certain factors that make a difference in decision making. We have age, okay? The ability to make informed decision improves with age, but is not fully developed, that frontal cortex, until the early 20s. Experience, right? Because children who have more experience making decisions are better at it than those who have less experience. Now, think about this large demographic of youth that's making decisions based upon emotions and influences, whether it be within their household, entertainment, TV, or camps. Because what I didn't go over, and I may go back here, family, some of these camps are accepting children who are not part of the LGBT community. So what is that doing for them? They are creating an environment that is fun, that is inclusive. Because think about it. When I was growing up, we used to make fun of heavy kids. We used to make fun of kids of my complexion that's very dark. It's called the dozens. It's called joning. It's called bragging and ragging. We have all these things. We used to just make fun of each other. It's kind of part of our culture in a certain sense. But we pretty much got rid of colorism within the foundational Black American community, early within the 60s and 70s. But family, if I read some of these, let me go up a little bit here. Let's just give you one example so I can get back on track here. Camp Highlight for children between the ages of 8 and 15 who have an LGBTQ parent. It states here the Academy for Teen ages 6 and 18 who have an LGBTQ parent. Highlight Family Camp for LGBTQ parents with their children up to ages 18 for a family weekend of fun and community. See, this camp looks as though it's for the youth and the family and the children. They're not stating that the children are part of the LGBTQ plus community. They're saying that the parents are. But if they're watching and learning and being mentored by their parents, and then they're going to put them in an inclusive environment that's built around fun, games, and activities, what are the chances of them children being influenced by that behavior and environment? What are the chances of them becoming part of a community that they normally wouldn't be a part of if they had a father who's a biological male and a mother who's a biological female? I digress. Let me carry on, because we left off with experience, did we not? Now we have to think about the intelligent part, because we understand that children with higher intelligence are generally better at making informed decisions. But again, we have to go back to that frontal cortex. But I digress with that as well. Temperament. Now, children who are impulsive and easily influenced by their emotions are more likely to make poor decisions, and that is when the rubber meets the road, ladies and gentlemen, because we know majority of our children are more impulsive and emotional than they are leaning towards their intelligence to make these decisions. Because it doesn't matter if your child is very smart and is intelligent, but we have to look at children as a whole. And you know, and I know, children as a whole can be, to a certain degree, selfish, not saying all, but a lot of them are very impulsive and they're very influential based upon their emotions. And then lastly, which is probably one of the most important indicators of your child turning out to be a certain thing, because in the Black community, we know this far too well, the environment. Because children who grow up in a supportive and neutral environment are more likely to develop the skills that they need to make informed decisions. Now take children born up in the hood, children who are born up in the ghetto, who are surrounded by drugs, who are surrounded by dusty dudes and 304s. Look at the outcome of those children who didn't have a particular environment and parents who were very influential in their lives. And we understand that we have not come to these outcomes by ourselves. We had help, if not directed and told, by the dominant society, by the white dominant society in the reference of white supremacy. There's a lot that we can do, Foundational Black American family, talking to our children about the consequences of their actions, helping them to make fruitful and informative decisions, encouraging children to think about their consequences of their actions. All these are very important. But I'll leave you with this. Children of homosexuals more apt to be homosexuals. A reply to Morrison's and Cameron based on an examination of multiple sources of data. It states here, studies involving family histories of 262 children of gay fathers and lesbian mothers were evaluated statistically. Daughters of lesbian mothers were most likely 33 to 57% odds ratios from 4.5 to 12.1 to report non-heterosexual identities. Data from ethnographic sources and from previous studies on gay and lesbian parenting were re-examined and found to support the hypothesis that social and parental influences may influence the expression of non-heterosexual identities and or behavior. Thus, evidence is presented from 3 different sources, contrary to most previous scientific opinion, even most previous scientific consensus that suggests intergenerational transfer of sexual orientation can occur at statistically significant and substantial rates, especially for female parents or female children. In some analysis for sons, intergenerational transfer was not significant. So basically they're stating here in this study, based upon the ratios, that children, especially female youth who have lesbian parents, are more likely to become lesbian versus gay men with a son of conforming to be gay. But nonetheless, the statistics were high in both categories. So when we look at this in totality, children who have gay parents and those gay parents, lesbian or gay, part of the LGBT community who adopt children are very influential in those children making decisions of their sexuality. So beware, understand this white supremacist liberal attack on our children, and revolt, rebel, and resist. Be one.